floor for the very first time. We're excited. This is a behind-the-scenes look for people in social media, in the media, and some of our members at this year's show. Our hashtag is ArtNowOKC, and for those of you playing along at home, feel free to follow and comment. Everybody here, please tweet, post, get the world excited about this incredible show, and I'm going to turn it over to our co-curators.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming out. My name is Jennifer Scanlon. I am the Curatorial and Exhibitions Director here at Oklahoma Contemporary, and this is my lovely co-curator. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Anderson. I'm an independent artist and curator. Before I signed on to help this, I was the curator of education and capital galleries at the Oklahoma Arts Council for the past 8 years. And for many years while I was doing that job, I would visit ArtNow to help as a resource for artists for the Capitol Gallery. So it was really fun working with Jennifer over the past year to kind of turn that around and make it full circle and bring some of the artists that I've worked with in the past too.
Yes, so Allison and Allison has this really deep knowledge of artists, not only in the metropolitan areas, but all over Oklahoma. So we spent hours and hours and hours in the car driving across Oklahoma landscapes, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through, about those experiences and how they really shaped the exhibition to a large part, and they certainly got me to know. I came here 2 years ago from New York, and they really were a great introduction to some of the areas of Oklahoma that I had not seen before. And one of the things we're trying to do as we go through is show a whole, we have 25 artists in the show, we have about 175 works in the exhibition. Many of the pieces were made especially for this exhibition. Some of them have never been shown before. Many of the artists have never been shown before. We do have a requirement that we don't show artists from the past 3 years. So with the idea that we want to show as many new Oklahoma artists, that we really expand the number of Oklahoma artists that get featured, and that we entice people to come back every year and see all the new things, people they haven't seen before. So some of these works were surprises even to us. So we'll point that out as we go through. You'll get the behind the scenes story of a lot of these, which is one of the great things about this tour. We have a wide variety of artists in the exhibition. We'll start off with our only jewelry because it's kind of small, and at the beginning of this tour everybody can come up close and take a look, or if you can't, because we have this awesome big group, maybe at the end you can go see Elise Bogart's work. Do you want to talk about Elise?
Sure. Elise is a local jewelry maker out of Norman. She's a teacher at the Firehouse Art Center. She is greatly influenced by nature and using nature in her works. And she also creates a lot of artists from her teaching at the Firehouse with a great student base and everything that she's doing there.
So we're really interested in exploring creativity in all of its forms, and you'll see that a little bit as we go through the sort of variety of media we like to include, and interested in Elise because she's creating one-of-a-kind works as well.
Yes.
Okay. Moving on, we have here Yakin Bulula, who is an Oklahoman, lives here in Oklahoma City, but was born and grew up in Ethiopia. So what he is doing with this particular series is, it's called A Mother's Prayer, with the Mother's Prayer always being that you are happy and doing well wherever you are. So he is thinking back on his childhood growing up in Ethiopia, and especially the memories that he has. And he has to kind of reconcile those memories with the space he's in right now, which is very different from Ethiopia. So he has, through these photographs, really recreated memories he has, but set them into Oklahoma. So the pictures of his sort of self-portraits here, he's actually wearing Ethiopian clothing, but he's in an Oklahoma setting. So it's about memories, it's about your childhood memories and how you reconcile them. A very personal set of photographs, and quite beautiful, sort of evocative reminiscences of his past, but also makes us think about our own memories and how we bring them to wherever we are today.
Larry here. Yeah, Larry Hefner is actually here, so I would love for him to talk about his work. He's actually a former professor of mine and mentor to me from the University of Central Oklahoma. He was the graphic design chair at the College of Media. What was it called that I graduated from?
College of Fine Arts and Design.
Yes.
I would really wanted to hear what you had to say.
Oh, you can bring this to it. I've been practicing.
Well, as you can see, my work is abstract, but with a little bit of a twist, and I think the twist is, I feel like that these things are really more photorealistic than they are abstract. And that's from my point of view, obviously. But I work with a trompe-l'oeil effect where the splatters and bits of paint appear to be floating because of airbrush shadows that are underneath them and underneath some of the other layers. They're all acrylic. I apply them with squeegees and probably everything but a brush for the most part. So the spatial illusion is a big part. The rest of it is primarily abstract in the sense that I'm working with basic elements of art, color and color theory a lot, color, the receding and factors of color and how one color looks like it's in front of another and so on and so forth. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the trompe-l'oeil shadows as well. So, do you have any questions that I could answer that's not in the little catalog or anything else? I use a lot of different additives to the acrylic to make it thicker or thinner or just different things like that.
Do you start off with an idea of what you're going to do, or is
Absolutely not. No, I sometimes have an idea of color scheme or palette, and particularly if I'm trying to do a commission piece, then obviously that's a factor. But other than that, I call it sort of automatic painting, and it's process driven. So the very first few colors are strictly background attempts and background colors to give texture and color pattern that I like. Once I get that done, then I start laying in what I call mid-ground, and that's the bigger shapes, like the red shapes here and these other shapes here, and then the final foreground elements are the smaller little blips and splatters that are applied on top of that.
Great, thank you. We have 3 works by Larry here in the show as they go around the corner as well.
And this is Jericho Walsh, who is also here.
Actually, this is Jericho Walsh.
This is Jericho Walsh. And this is Jericho Walsh.
That feels like it.
Yeah. And the awesome titles are Jericho Walsh as well. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about when we came to see you in the studio? You were really interested in circles, in holes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how these pieces came about.
So I've kind of been working around in this sort of shape a lot this year, and the circles, I was telling them when they came to visit, like, that just sort of feels like who I am. Like, when I look at it, it feels sort of like a self-portrait, but with these pieces, they're kind of 2 separate series, but they sort of go the same. The 3 on the lower pedestal, those are the fragility series, and that was sort of thinking about, like, it all kind of started about a year ago, and thinking about like a resistance and responding to things that happen that kind of leave you feeling gutted and building back up, and it's these very tiny little connections with the pieces to sort of grow and build. So anyway, they all it's forward, onward, upward are the titles, and I feel like the shape was sort of dictating their names. And then these other ones is the Star Stuff series, and so it's sort of thinking about like that we are all made of star stuff, and just kind of thinking about all these pieces like talismans. We talked a lot about how process is important, and that's where it all is for me. And so in building them and sort of infusing them with power and wanting to kind of pass that on, I guess.
Yeah, Jericho's a great example of an artist that made works. I don't know if you made these expressly for the show, but these were not. Yeah, so these were not pieces we'd seen. We'd seen a lot of these series. So we unpacked them, but then we saw the list and the titles. You're gonna have to go and look at the titles because they're all pretty amazing. They're very empowering. They're very much about like feeling good. Like this one, "You Are Right on Track." you feel like you could get this one and just have it on your desk and remind you every now and then that you're right on track and things are going fine. So that was one of the lovely surprises, was getting these great titles from Jerica and reminding ourselves that we were, with this exhibition, we were right on track.
Especially now, Jerica is the newly named associate director of Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition. So the fact that she's bringing that kind of positivity into the arts community is, for professional development is awesome. So.
Are there any questions for Jerica? We'll also have some time to mill around, and you can, corner her and drill her afterwards too. Okay, let's move on then.
Christine Aria is an artist that we met when we were visiting the Kaiser Foundation's Tulsa Artist Fellowship. And she's here with her partner from the Bay Area of California. Christine is working with watercolor in a non-typical manner, where she's working larger than life size, letting the paper hang freely and letting you have an intimate relationship with the painting, getting to look at the different details up close and how the paper reacts to age and travel and time and things like that. When we were in her studio, she had just started. She's really good about working really small and very large. She had these scraps of paintings that she'd done of strong women or influential women in the arts, and was trying to figure out how to present them because they were just rolled up and all over a table. And she came up with this for us to be able to show this painting of Frida Kahlo for our show here. And she's got a whole other series. This series right here is still in the works. So she's in Tulsa. She also just completed a residency in Alva at Northwestern Oklahoma State University, which is very interesting to see artists from outside of Oklahoma spending time through the fellowship.
It's really interesting for me to think about watercolors. We think about painting in watercolors as being two-dimensional, something you put on the wall. To start to think about them as sculpture, as three-dimensional. The way that the paper curves is a little bit like the curve of the body. So I'm kind of excited about this piece and how she's turning some of our expectations on their side, literally. Okay, we have Dean Wilhite with us, who perhaps would like to talk a little bit about these paintings we have here.
I feel like Larry. I want to hear what you guys say first.
Yeah, I can say that, especially since Jennifer's newer to Oklahoma, I was really excited to show this painting of the Union Bus Station.
It was like, Union Bus Station, Union Bus Station.
I just kept saying it to her. And I knew that our audience would really like it, especially since the bus station is no longer with us.
So I'm Dean Wilhite. I paint in acrylic paint on the canvas. That's really the only way I work right now. My goal is to find things that are memories of everything. Things that remind you of something from your past. They're all things that make me happy, except for the bus station because that's a sad one. But most of the things that I paint are things that remind me of a happy time that I had in my past. I don't know why I'm drawn so much to windows and doors, but it seems like that the windows and doors that I paint are the portrait of a building. Not the whole building, but the most important part. And a lot of times they can be a specific building, but most of the time they're just any building. There's something that ties me back to old Oklahoma towns, small towns, places where my grandparents, my parents came from. Then the other things that I do are just old kitschy bright colors. I just love bright colors and try to bring happiness to me when I'm working on things, and hopefully that transfers to the viewer.
So you're doing these from photographs?
I take photographs of everything that I work on. I take the photographs into the computer and I really kind of super adjust them. Like for instance, this brick wall with the windows, that's not really how it looked. I mean, I'll take the windows and switch them around and make the composition what I want it to be before I start painting it. And so I'm really adjusting the photographs to be my vision of whatever it is I'm painting.
Are there any other questions? We'll move on. I'd like to bring out our next artist is Karen Walking Stick. There you are right here. We're going to bring you right here in the middle because we have sort of spread your works out all over the gallery.
Okay.
So, yeah, so why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Karen Walking Stick, and I hear everybody talking about what ties them to their art. I started pottery 4.5 years ago. I'm Cherokee, and I took a class with the Cherokee National Treasure, Jane Austin, and I was hooked the first class I took. And there's a couple pieces here. This is my latest one, the bigger one, Grandma's Garden. And there's a lot of, my heritage ties me to this. And there's so many pieces here that show our designs from the southeast before the Trailers, and we all had it's not just the 5 civilized tribes, but it's symbology from the southeast. And you can see it all through there, and it's with each of my pieces. There's a corrugated pot over here that's it's built by stacking little coils on top of each other. Everything's quill built. Nothing's built on a wheel. And I just stack the coils, and they're built like shingles on top of each other. And there's 63 coils, I think, in that pot there. And this little piece here, this is like a coral. Some people call it bubbles. Some people call it eyeballs, Cheerios, all kinds of stuff. But it's supposed to be like coral, and seems like barnacles. Barnacles is a parasite, so it's easier to call it coral than it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Also the color, yeah.
And the coloring off of the brown pot there, I do a lot of pine needle firing. It's called a flash fire. It takes about 7 minutes, and I build a little nest of pine needles, put the pot in it, cover it up with pine needles, light it on fire, and I get what I get when it comes out. So.
But are these painted on?
That's
We had a question
painted with
earlier.
mason stains, and so is the other one. The big one over here is painted with acrylics, and this is a combination of both.
Okay.
And are the others done on wheels?
None of them are done on wood.
All on
Never
wood?
used some
Wow.
And that's
You're really good at it.
Yeah, isn't she?
Thank you.
And that's how Jane teaches as well. Jane Austin teaches everything hand built.
This is actually a rattle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which encourage kids to work with.
No, you have to buy it.
If
And then you can
purchase
shake it all
you
you
can
want.
shake it.
It's kind of interesting to see this cherry blossom, which it was right over by these because of for me, the Japanese aesthetic. Was that part of what you were thinking about for that piece, or did you have a different?
All my friends were in DC, and
the
I was
cherry
at home
blossom
when it was
there.
May. And,
So this is kind of an homage to your friends who
Yeah.
were in DC.
They were seeing
Okay. Were there any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So interesting, as I said, this sort of Japanese aesthetic that the cherry blossoms have here, because that's definitely, Marjorie's not here, right? That is definitely an influence in our next artist, who is Marjorie Atwood. Marjorie studied printmaking under a Japanese artist at Sarah Lawrence College, and this became part of her aesthetic as a painter. So we have here a range of her work. We have 2 of these very large-scale works, in which she's incorporated sort of a very signature element, which is her gold leaf, which she does in a very traditional style. You can see, if you look up close, that she's painted red underneath, so it's got this very warm color. And then she has the squares of gold leaf, which then get applied. So that which really brings out and sort of glorifies the figures that she has, which are 2 iconic, strong women figures. This one is the ninja geisha, so very strong, very badass geisha there, very involved in her movements with other sort of elements of Asian, Japanese particularly, visual effects with ginkgo leaves. And then this figure right here is Rosalia, who she derived from the Roman goddess Rosalia, fertility, interested in roses and flowers. So she's taking elements from various cultures to talk about women and strong women and the figure of women. And here in these smaller pieces that she's done, she's using women that to kind of look at psychological portraits. So they're not specific women, they don't have specific names, but they're very much about inward thinking and what goes on inside their heads. She's trying to show that through these 2 works.
we're going to swing around over here and talk about Jason Sataki's work. So I'll give you guys a chance to come over. Jason Sataki is a painting professor at the University of Oklahoma. He uses a very traditional method of painting, which is something that I had a great interest in because of it's similar to how Charles Banks Wilson, who painted a lot of the murals at the Capitol, painted. Does anyone have any idea what might be a little bit odd about his paintings or the scenery here?
You have to look close. We're inviting you to step closer.
Other than that it's at night?
Yeah, what is it?
Cardboard. Jason builds his scenery from he builds three-dimensional models out of cardboard and paints from those. But the interesting thing is a lot of traditional painters work that way, building, as I mentioned, Charles Banks Wilson from the Capitol would build plaster models and paint from those to get the three-dimensional aspects and the shadows and things like that. But Jason's actually letting you in on the secret a little bit. He's making it kind of obvious or leaving little hints that he built these models. And if you follow him on Instagram or Facebook, he posts the models a lot of times, which is really interesting, how he built them. And not only the cardboard, but he also leaves a little bit of a hint in perspective, or maybe the size of the beer cans, as Jennifer said. Those could be 40s though. So. They're just a little bit larger.
The other thing which just occurred to me as I'm looking at these, I mean, they're very much cinematographic. I mean,
Yes.
they're very much about like these little scenes, which are kind of ominous, ominous.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be drinking 40, should I? They're a little ominous and a little bit weird, and you don't quite know what's going to happen, but you don't also have, since they're made out of cardboard, the sense of scenography, that it's all kind of a fake movie set.
Yeah.
That isn't. So you have both the foreboding and the also sense that it's not quite real.
Yeah, it's great. I know, that's what I was saying earlier, that Jason's the type of artist that you don't ask him to do anything particular. He just moves on this trail and you just follow it and show his work when you want to. He has a very unique style.
We didn't see these until we knew his work was going to but this is one that he did especially for this show. So this is the first time they've been seen in public.
And again, teaching it at the University of Oklahoma.
So he teaches.
Yeah.
So this whole range here, from this black and white all the way over here, is the work of one artist. One of the things we really try to do with ArtNow is to look at an artist a little more in depth. That's why each artist has anywhere from 3 to 5 pieces that we show of theirs. And in Jan's case, we actually went up to, 6, 9, 11 pieces. We went and we included quite a broad spectrum. So we start over here. When I did a studio visit with her a little over a year ago, she was working in this black and white using carbon. Very much, you didn't get a sense of the hand, very clean, very graphic imagery, working a lot with this kind of ombre shading in here, and very, very clean lines and monochromatic. And then I came back with Allison this summer and went and did a studio visit, and she had opened up with all of this gorgeous color. We just walked in and she had this all the way around a relatively small showing room. So that was really exciting to see. And she's done things like she's done this, instead of doing it on paper, she's done it on wood. So if you go up close, you can really see the wood. She's let the wood come through. She hasn't covered the entire surface. You have a real sense of texture. Some of the paint is quite thin, so it's not opaque. It doesn't cover the surface. You get a sense of all of her brush strokes, which is quite lovely, a sense of texture and process with the work that she's doing. So very, very different. And then we have a third kind of small group here of watercolors and gouaches that are very lightly done, and are a third aspect of her practice. So with this, we get to see quite a wide range in the work that she's doing.
Mark Barker is an artist who's based in Oklahoma City. He, for the past 35 years, has primarily worked in intaglio printing. And that's the way that I was more familiar with him as a fellow printmaker. But this work here really highlights a few of my favorite parts of working with Jennifer over the last year and curating the exhibition. One is that anytime we went on a lot of road trips to find these artists, and Jennifer talked about the sky a lot. How gorgeous
In the middle of a sentence, I just go, oh my God, look at that sky.
Pull over, I have to take a photo of the sky or anything like that as a newer Oklahoman. But something unique that Mark does is I think you can see his history as an intaglio printer working with ink, in that he rarely, if ever, uses color. And here in these paintings, I think that really brings an emphasis to the strength of our clouds and our cloudscapes and sky imagery in Oklahoma. So that's something that I think was, and again, about working with Jennifer is Mark was an artist that I've been really familiar with working as a printmaker for many years, and Jennifer actually pointed out these paintings that we should go see them, and it was intriguing to take a second look and see what he's doing now and things like that, having a newer perspective of what he's doing.
It's the same Mark that works in 3D.
No.
Okay. More printmaking. We have Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones is a professor at OU in printmaking, and he also runs a really great art space where they do printmaking and they do concerts. It's a fun kind of punk rock space that is adding a lot to the art scene in Norman and Oklahoma in general. So this series right here is a series which shows a really interesting way in which Curtis works, in which he is using both digital manipulation and craft. He has taken images from the internet. So you get here, for example, this elephant's a great example. He has manipulated them so that they get stretched and elongated, or you get the head of the snake on the cow. And he has also turned them into these patterns. So what seems maybe abstract is, in fact, these are the snakes that have become the pattern. And if you look even closer, you get the elephant that has become the pattern, and perhaps the cow as well. It's very intricate and layered. And then on top of this sort of he prints them, and on top of that, they're watercolor. So he's also added this sort of unique touch to every single print, and they're on both sides. So anyone who buys one of these gets two for the price of one, because there's an artwork on each side. This piece right here, we just included. It's not for sale even, but we both thought it was such a great sort of part of his practice that we wanted to include it. And I'm throwing this part to you because you're the printmaker.
This is actually a work in progress for Curtis, and something that most curators have, most printmakers have sitting around their studio is a lot of scrap mat board and mat board chips and things like that, as you use them to move ink around and things like that. Curtis is actually, that's his source material here. He used just scrap mat board. And his practice as a printmaker, I think, shows, because these are all hand painted. They look die cut, mass produced, maybe even what you would find at a toy store or something, with felt boards to move things around and create sceneries. But they're all hand painted. If you look closely, you can see signs of that. And this, as Jennifer said, it's not for sale because it's a work in progress, and we're continuing to build on it.
And rearrange it in different ways. So they're all sort of separate pieces that he's come and he arranges on site. And I kind of loved it because these are all things that he made organically. Like you would doodle, as you're talking on the phone or you're in class or whatever, you're just kind of fiddling around with pen. But this is what Curtis does when he doodles. So they all kind of come from his consciousness. It's kind of interesting, a little theme that's developing tonight of artists that work spontaneously and react to the moment, and artists that plan things very carefully out. And some artists doing both.
And then we've got from one printmaker to another. Calcius, why don't you come up here? Calcius is a printmaker here in Oklahoma City. He does a lot of his printing. If he's not printing in his own studio, he's printing at Untitled Art Space. And he's also ventured out from taking characters from his imagery, obviously inspired by something that is new to me, the science fiction and fantasy worlds, after working on the Great Harryhausen exhibition at Science Museum. And he's brought them into the creation of small toys and ways to bring art home with you, if not in the two-dimensional. Why don't you talk a little bit about
Start with the prints because these were from a particular series.
Yeah, this is a series of prints. I did about 36 of these, and they're all characters from different mythologies and legends.
Like the Men in Black, that legend.
Yeah, this is a pretty modern American one from the 20th century, the Men in Black, which are all aliens. This is a Ketis from Greek mythology. It's a sea serpent, leviathan kind of creature. This is a Hakigani crab, which is Japanese legend of this one group of samurai that got wiped out, and then the story says that they were reincarnated as a crab. And these crabs actually exist. They have this kind of face on their shell, so the locals say that their souls are trapped in the crabs. And this is Cthulhu from H.P. Lovecraft, which is really popular now. But it's like a kraken.
So when did you get started with the toys?
toys are
Oh yeah, a few years ago. I've always collected toys and I've always liked toys. And I've always considered them little pieces of art because I know, like the things that I collected when I was a kid, I know that there's some guy in a studio designing these and then he sells them to Playmates. Like Kevin Stark, that guy's from Oklahoma. He did that stuff with Playmates. He's one of those guys that I'm thinking about. So when I was in college, I ended up kind of coming across this artist design toy world. Made one of my own once. So I was going to make a bunch of them. Shelved it. Didn't think about it for a while. And then I started coming back to it the more I looked at it. And then I started kind of hooking up with these dudes in New York and Los Angeles and started making my own series of toys because I'm a sculptor. I studied ceramics and mold making and stuff in college, and I hadn't done it in a while. I moved to this because it was easier to manage my little tiny studio space that I had at the time. And then I got the urge I wanted to sculpt again. And then it's kind of at the same time I was looking at these designer toys and my materials and started making my own.
which you've been able to spend more time working on since you stopped teaching. Up until the past year, you were a public school art teacher.
Yes, I was a public school art teacher. Worked in a bunch of different locations local in the city. I taught here. Actually, I have a vinyl toy I had made out of Mexico. I actually sculpted that here with some kids.
Here at Oklahoma Contemporary.
Yeah, back there.
Yeah.
We were doing a how to use polymer clay class. That was my example. What are you going to do? Is I'm going to make an astronaut. And I ended up sending it to Los Angeles, and then it went to Mexico City, and I got 100-something vinyl reproductions.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah, we were excited about including them because, as I was saying with Elise, but also here, there's things that you think of as traditional art. We have the paintings, we have the prints, but also there's a lot of creative artists in Oklahoma working with things that you don't necessarily think of, but we very much see the creativity and the art within these, which I should say are not for kids.
Right. Not necessarily.
They're not that kind of
toys.
They're definitely for adults who are interested in small scale sculpture.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So over here across from Nicholson's work, we've got the work of Clint Stone also on the edge of the movable wall here in these two paintings. If anyone's familiar with Clint's work, he normally spends a lot of time on his comic books and social media drawings and things like that with uplifting messages about how to maybe have a chance to change the world or have a little control over our fates and things like that. And when we talked to him about working, being included in the show for ArtNow, it was, I think, very exciting for me and Jennifer because he took it and said, if I'm going to do the show, I'm going to do something that you wouldn't expect from me. And he took a little bit of a dark turn here. Instead of where his usual focus is how we might have control over our fate, through science or through good deeds. He focused on the three fates of life here in this series, and starting with the thread, the idea that you're born with a thread throughout your life, and the fates decide when it's cut. And so, as many of you might know, Clint's work, usually uplifting, he took a little bit of a darker turn, but continued to use the color palette of his uplifting messages. And if you look closely, he also worked in layers here, starting with collage with lots of comics in the background, because he can't do anything without just making you laugh a little bit. So
He's also incorporated, you mentioned the science, I don't know if I heard that, but the
Yes.
DNA over there,
Right.
which connects to his work at the Science Museum.
yeah, and if you're not, Clint not only is an artist, but he was also recently named Vice President of Programming at Science Museum of Oklahoma. So we're glad he's still making artwork too.
Yep, so once again, these are works that have never been seen before in public. You guys are seeing them for the first time on this tour. Dylan Caven is this artist right here. He is Native American. He's very interested in working within Native American two-dimensional iconography and traditions. This is his niece here that often serves as a model, wrapped in the Hudson blanket. And we have a sort of more traditional bison. He often sells at Indian markets and within Indian or Native American themed galleries. We were really interested in, this is something that I know that Alice was very passionate about, something that I was interested to hear. As I said at the beginning, showing the wide range of work that's going on in ArtNow and avoiding these kinds of silos and segregation. So we were really interested in bringing his work within the context of the greater work in Oklahoma. So he has also a series we have here, and then there's two on the wall right by Allison there of ledger drawings, which are artwork, his original artwork, but they're on historic documents. And this one of his niece is particularly poignant. It's on a guardian sale record, which is actually a land record, but it also has a small child on it. So it makes you think of a lot of issues within Native American history in the United States. We can move on.
Since you enjoyed art,
I will. I'll do Catherine Warren because, I've just been going on and on about the skies. We had a beautiful road trip to Lawton to visit Catherine and see her work through the Wichita Mountains, really spectacular. And then Catherine lives sort of not in a completely rural, but a slightly more remote space where she has this wonderful studio that looks out over the landscape, and she has captured it really so well. These watercolors here I particularly loved because while they are clearly landscapes, they have also really become more and more abstract. I think by the time we get down to this one, she's really, you can see, made just a few washes there to create a feeling of a landscape. And you can see what it looks like, but it also has become extremely abstracted. So we have this body of work, and then we have a very recent body of work that she's been doing. This is not Oklahoma, this is, I believe, the Southwest, and she has been drawing with carbon pencil, much more intense studies of rock formations and mountains. These are much more detailed, so we can feel, but with the same sort of reverence for the landscape and for some of these iconic images of the American West.
So if we can move all the way over into this area, I'm going to talk about Douglas Shaw Elder over here on this wall, who works primarily with wood, but in not quite a three-dimensional manner. Douglas started working with this type of wood design with a large piece of plywood and a chainsaw was in the beginning. He's refined it a little bit more and uses routers and things like that. Again, as you'll notice, a lot of the artists in this show are working with the idea of landscape, which he is doing very well here. Douglas also is the executive director of the Firehouse Art Center in Norman. He works there about 60 hours a week, works in his studio at home about 60 hours a week, and Jennifer uses a good word to describe him and his practice. He's very passionate about materials, about color, about wood, about composition. During his process of working with these designs, he started to think of these more as like a printmaking plate and talked about like what they would look like if you inked them up and printed them onto paper. And that took him to exploring a little bit more of this direction, where he's found this great synthetic paper that reacts really interestingly with ink. He, as we talked earlier about doodling, these are basically his doodles here. He creates these a lot, and I think they every single one is so different and interesting. Oh yeah. So Brooke Golightly, right here, if her name isn't cool enough, Brooke Golightly, is a photographer working in the conceptual style of photography. She actually, these two on right here are both self-portraits. She usually works early in the morning or at dusk. She takes props and costumes and has a whole scene that she sets of photographing herself, if not bringing someone else with her. And doesn't just stop at the photographing process. She has these printed and then covers them with resin and sands them down to give them a matte finish. A lot of times on first inspection you might think they're an oil painting, but these are actually photographs, and really in it from the beginning, from the concept to the end, when she's not working her day job as a bailiff, which I also think is very interesting.
And kind of the opposite of
Yes, completely opposite way. It's fun. So,
okay, why don't we just turn around completely? And I'll talk about Susan Morrison Dyke, who actually has a studio right over near where our new building is going to be. So that was fun to go visit her. So we've seen a lot of landscapes. You guys have all heard about how much I love the Oklahoma landscape. Another thing that I loved when I came to Oklahoma is the built environment. And Dean, usually when we talk about when we hit your section over there is how interested you are in the built environment, in the architecture and the buildings, and particularly modernism of this sort of 1920s, 1930s, and especially mid-century, 1950s and 60s. Very clean lines and all of this, in the middle of all of this space. So I happen to love mid-century modernism. That is how I furnish my house. And Susan Morrison Dyke equally loves the visual vocabulary of furnishings of mid-century modernism. So she's using them here as visual devices. Here, for example, these great mid-century legs have created a series of lines that take you all over in contrast with the really soft organic curves of the seats and backs. Here we have this great mid-century modern chair that has become really almost an abstract symbol in her collages and ink drawings. Okay.
Tamawaki or Casa is one of my favorite local artists, and I think that you guys are probably more familiar with his work than you might think, as he is a metalsmith who works with the Crucible Foundry in Norman. So he has worked to create many of the monumental bronze sculptures that you see around Oklahoma. He's also a jewelry maker. When I was first asked to work on this show, he's one of the first artists that came to mind that I wanted to showcase and bring out. I just had no idea what he was working on at the time. And I have totally enjoyed exploring these actions, which is what
Action figures.
action
They're like action
figures.
figures with eggs.
Yes, but I also think of them, they're kind of like emojis. But if you think about it, what Tamawaki's done here is he's taken two, as a jewelry maker and a metalsmith, he's taken two of the least like expressive art forms and put so much life and expression into these little creatures. And also, if you think of him, he's working with bronze and metal all day, two very strong, substantial mediums, and then showcase it with eggs, which are so delicate, and the exact opposite. But he sent us a book about of about 30 of these creations, and Jennifer and I just, it's like we laughed, we cried, we just went right along with all of the emotions showcased here. Like this one, which I just love, it's called Stop Making Me Laugh, and as he's holding his belly and putting his arm up, and then this one right here is called That's Not What I Meant, as like the female egg is like putting her hand over, like, I can't believe you said that, and he's got his hands up. It's like a whole drama going on here with it.
With the eggs.
With the eggs. I love it so much.
So the next group of works is by Vinod Sarabian, and she is here to talk. Do you want to talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, okay.
Please do. Tell us about your journey to Oklahoma and to
Sure. I'm an Iranian artist, and when I was 10 years old, I started painting, and I graduated from Art University in Tehran, Iran, and in 2010 I decided to move here. So almost 7 years I'm here, and my style is completely different when I was working in Iran. My style was kind of abstract, figurative, but here my works tended towards to realism. Most of the time I have a life model, and I try to convey my simultaneous feeling and my inspiration on canvas. And I think when I have life model, my brush stroke are so loose and they are bold. And as a woman, really thinking about how women, they are strong, they are beautiful, and they are delicate, but they are not weak. It's my goal to transfer this concept of powerful of women on my pieces, sketches, maybe more long poses like this stuff. I have Amber and Bree. They are ladies, and that I ask them to pose for me, and sometimes I ask my daughter, and a few of my paintings are self-portrait. Yes, and also I have different subject matters, also landscape, horses, still life, that I think I can paint or draw with the different subject matter. For example, if I want to convey the subject matter or concept of love, I can paint a horse maybe. So that's a whole. I don't want to talk.
Okay. But I hadn't realized before that your subject matter had changed when you moved here, because I find that fascinating that you moved here and all of a sudden this figure of the woman as a really strong woman came out, which is almost autobiographical, and you have these two strong daughters which grew into adulthood here in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So over here we have Michael Nicholson is a painter out of Edmond, Oklahoma, and Michael spends a lot of his time. He's a very prolific artist, and he spends a lot of his time studying site-specific landscape. He travels and paints a lot of these. He actually calls these three pieces here. He calls them drawings. He's not here. Have you seen it? Okay. So these are the smaller works in his collection are usually studies for what will become the larger paintings like we have here. The two top and this one is one of his past collections, and the bottom one here is he's currently studying and developing art around these CCC lands in Oklahoma. So he's traveled a lot for that. He's a native from Kansas, but then he moved.
Oh, is he from Kansas? Okay.
I
think he was from here and then he moved to Kansas.
But he's lived all over Oklahoma. And I think he has a really special quality to his art where when you're looking at one of his larger works, you can stand in front of it and feel like you're in it. It really surrounds you, and it's not jarring at all. It's very calming and meditative, and you can just see his love for Oklahoma landscape and what he creates.
This next artist, Antimatter, is another one of these artists that you kind of have to get up close to see what he's actually doing, because when you're far away from it, it might look a little bit like abstraction, like it's a painting, or it's kind of hard to tell what it is. But once again, it's the cardboard that gives it away. Andy is a photographer. These are all photographs. He tends to photograph, he teaches up at OSU, he tends to photograph really banal household objects with a sort of intensity and clarity that makes them seem strange and otherworldly. In this case, he has used sort of the remnants of his profession. These are all old, discarded boxes of photographic print paper. He's masked the words on the print paper until they've just become very abstract blocks of color, kind of looking at the way that they've been, the graphic design of it, but also disassociating disassociating the actual object from what we might think it is. So it's a really interesting, it's interesting I think as an abstract study, but it's also fascinating to think about the ways in which products in our lives have this beauty or this interesting composition that we may ignore because they're so commonplace until he takes them out of that space.
Emily Chase is originally from Oklahoma. She grew up in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, but she moved away and is now back. She moved away, right? And then came back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she moved to Arkansas.
Moved to Arkansas and then came back through the Tulsa Artist Fellowship in Tulsa. And her primary medium is cut paper. So all of this is paper illuminated by light. Over here, she tells a story in layers. These are called, this one's called Relative Variant. This one, Carry It With You. Really expressive imagery showing a girl carrying her home on her back as she travels throughout life. A couple more cut paper illuminated by light, and then these really interesting paper garments that she's made that look like you could just take them off the hanger and put them on a child, but they are all cut paper. I think she brings a really interesting nostalgic feel to all of.
I mean, we've heard this in a couple of places. What she said, this series came from losing her home and what that means to carry your home with you, which is very much what Yakim did, and we've heard that from a couple of other artists as well. So this idea of home, really interesting sort of sub-theme for the Oklahoma artists here. We'll end with Whitney Forsythe, who, are you up for talking about this work? You don't want to? Okay, because I have a whole spiel with me. This is a work that we're really excited about, and I am so especially excited because we have been waiting a year and a half basically for this one. We had contacted Whitney about being in last year's ArtNow, and we were going back and forth about what she might do, and she was saying, well, she had this idea. She was working at the time, as a matter of fact, at Untitled, doing one of these installations, very organic installations, site-specific, all in white ceramic. And she really wanted to try using color. So she had this idea to do it, but she didn't feel like she had the time to get it done for last year's ArtNow. So we said, okay, we'll do it next year. And I got back in touch with her this year so that we could do it. And you told me as you were installing it that this was really the impetus to push yourself to do this idea that you had for a long time. So I'm just going to wrap up this by saying this is exactly what we're excited about. This is exactly what we're hoping ArtNow can become, this opportunity to showcase Oklahoma artists, to show them doing a wide variety of work, but also to be able to show them doing some new, exciting, to push themselves to do some greater things. So we're really happy about this year. I'd like to thank all of the artists who came out tonight.